All right, my name is Rich Schmidt. We're here with Leyla Ersan and Ian Shapen. It's January 17th, 2026, and we're at Day Wines in Dundee. And Leyla, Ian, thank you both so much for joining us today.
Thanks.
First question, as you know, either one of you can start, is why wine?
Well, I didn't know any tea makers, so wine sounded fun. Wine's always kind of been a part of my life. I think just spending so much time with my grandparents, and a lot of what we would do together was, prepare dinner, and we would have really beautiful dinners together. And my grandma always made sure that, the table was set properly, and, we had hors d'oeuvres and the main course and dessert, and everything had their own plating, and that also just meant that everything had their own wine pairing too. And so even though I wasn't partaking in drinking wine growing up, I just knew like what things paired with what. And I think I just carried that my whole life. And then in college, I started to get pretty interested in wine and the process of wine and how it can be so different. And I just loved that the more that I learned about wine, I found out the more I didn't know about wine. And it really just took interest. And I think Ian and I being together, we also really enjoyed having wonderful meals together and, spending all day cooking together and then finding the perfect wine pairing. And it just, in a way, kind of became an obsession for us. It just became interesting. And then to be working in it, it becomes a little like infectious, you want to be a part of it. And I love the hands-on process of it, and I love to talk nonstop about it, and then to invite people over to my house, and I create a meal for them with the perfect wine pairing. So it's kind of, I think, why wine for me.
For me, our relationship kind of started around food and wine, and it really allowed us to grow closer together. And wine wasn't and still isn't necessarily my first career choice. Before I was working in wine, I was working as a freelance graphic designer. And Leyla started in, was it 2018 or 19?
Yeah, early 2019.
Here at Day Wines, and I was really interested in all of the, different places that she had to put her hands around the building. It being a small production, small team, everybody has to kind of chip in every possible place that they can. I kind of was almost out of necessity to start into wine. In 2020, it was a very strange year between a pandemic, and then here in Oregon we had a historic wildfire season too. But because of the pandemic, most of the design work that I was doing at the time was based around restaurants, beverage makers, hospitality in general, and much of that work, it dried up. People were kind of unsure of the future, and allocating funds towards design work wasn't really the top priority. People wanted to, keep care of their employees and make sure that they could sustain their business and also just their people. Come fall 2020, I was kind of looking for some side work to do, and Leyla had mentioned that Brianne here at Day Wines needed some additional help with harvest. So I decided to come in and join the team for harvest, and it was kind of a whirlwind. It wasn't your average harvest by any means. But I think that's what kind of grew my interest, was the fact that you kind of had to be creative, and every year, every vintage kind of brings its own challenges. And that was a year that had so many challenges. So I think it was maybe the best year that I possibly could have come, even though it was one of the hardest and possibly worst vintages we've had in a while. And then I stuck with it. After that, just kind of took the fall and winter off of design work, even when my work ramped up again, and was working for other people doing harvests.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if you can work a 2020 harvest and you come out of there still wanting to work in wine, I think it means that you've found your place.
Yeah.
And I mean, I really wanted him to work here too, because I knew how much I loved it. And, we had talked about, we could both work in wine, we could do something, we could create something. And I knew if I trapped him in the building that, maybe we could move forward with it.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, Day Wines is, in a way, kind of a magical little place because we've had so many winemakers work here. And I think one reason why I just loved it so much when I started working here was because we were a co-op. And so we had so many young winemakers, for the most part, making natural wines. Maybe everyone was around our age or just slightly older, so we could kind of see our future. And I mean, it was really cool to just see a lot of normal people making wine, for the most part, no one's grandfather had given them land and a winery, and they didn't necessarily grow up with it, but it was something that had found them along their journey. And it was just really inspiring to be around them constantly and, to be able to pick their brain. And it's wonderful working for Brienne, but it was also just so cool to see what Brienne was doing, but then, see what people were doing maybe with even the same fruit, but treating it completely different. And then just getting to know why. And, so many people were working with so many different grape varieties in the building too, beyond Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. And it was just, it just had this kind of excitement and a buzz in the air constantly. And so, we became really close friends with a lot of the people that were working here. Because I think we had 7 or 8 different winemakers all making wine in the same building. And, it was a little bit of chaos. It was kind of, we would call it an organized shit show. And, because there was a schedule, but it was chaotic, and I loved that. I think Ian fell for it too.
Yeah, and to add to that, before we even really knew anything about wine, when we were in college and just kind of dipping our toes into trying different wines, a lot of the producers that we really liked from Oregon were making wine out of this building, or they were good friends with people making wine out of this building. So when we finally landed here, in whatever capacity we were here at, it felt really special to be kind of looking up to and seeing the people whose products we had enjoyed so much and being right next to them as they're making it. And it was...
Yeah, honestly, that was kind of crazy. Yeah. There was a wine bar and bottle shop in Eugene, because we lived in Eugene together. That's where we met. And it's called Broadway Wine Merchants. And we were there constantly. And I remember there was one year where we were really obsessed with Fossil and Fawn, skin contact Pinot Gris, to the point where I'm pretty sure I was buying cases of it. And we would ride our bike to the wine bar, fill up our bags with this Pinot Gris, and we would drink, Brienne's Tears of Vulcan and, all of these different wines. And then to come here and I'm like, it's all in the same building. It felt very full circle, because those were the wines that, really started to spark our interest. And to get excited about Oregon wine.
Yeah.
So.
And we slowly became friends with all of those people whose wine that we were drinking. And that kind of led to, I guess, the propulsion of me staying in the wine industry as well. We met the Maloufs while they were still making wine here. And after the 2020 harvest, we would grab drinks with them, and they offered me to come work with them in 2021. And that kind of grew all of our relationship, and they kept me around to do 3 harvests with them. And I continue to do work with them and for them in varying capacities. No longer wine work really, but design work. I work their restaurant in the summers when they have it open, and I was actually just grabbing drinks with Ross Malouf last night. So we're all very close, and they're actually, Brienne and the Maloufs were really the people who allowed us to do our first wine. Mm-hmm. We bought a little bit of fruit from Brienne, we bought a little bit of fruit from the Maloufs, and they opened up their cellar to us. So we were able to do our first I guess, the inaugural vintage of Horse Devours because of them.
Yeah, honestly, we were going to wait a couple years, and then, I remember I was talking to Bea Maloof, and she was like, just do it, like what's stopping you? We have the equipment, we have the space, and we bought 2 barrels and decided to, kind of make a random but very special wine for us. And we've kind of just continued that in a way.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I like your reference to normal people making wine. I've met and interviewed all those people. I think normal is a very nice way a very nice thing to call all of them.
Well, I would say they're not normal, but normally, financially normal, maybe. But all very eccentric people, to say the least. But growing up, sometimes when you think about wine, it kind of seems like something that's a little bit like just right out of reach, because one, it's a luxury, it's not something that everyone drinks, it's not something you have to drink, and it's usually kind of around celebration in a way. And so, I would think about Champagne and Burgundy and Bordeaux, and I was like, I can't just do that. But you can ferment some cucumbers, you can ferment some grapes, and I think what really helps too is the community, because everyone just helps each other, There's constant questions. I'll be in the cellar and I'll have a question and I'll be like, oh, what's going on with this wine? And, there's like 100 different people I can call and they'll answer the phone, or they'll even come by and try the wine right there or help me with whatever. And all of a sudden, something so out of reach became just very possible for us. And
And we've been lucky having worked around so many different winemakers, not necessarily worked for, but just been in the proximity of them, and they're all so willing and able to help us and really anybody in the industry. And I think that's really unique. You can say that about the arts and just the creative sector in general. People are pretty willing to help, but I feel more so people are willing to lend a hand in the wine industry, whether it's physically or just over the phone, whatever it is, they are there. And I think that's really special and unique. And I think what helps too is, all of these quote unquote normal people, for the most part, they've all worked in hospitality. Like, I don't think I know a single, small producer winemaker that hasn't worked in a restaurant or a bar. And so they've learned how to talk, and they love to talk, and so their favorite subject is typically wine. So we were so lucky that all of these people were willing to just nonstop talk to us about, their ethos and why they do things, how they do things, or we've worked so much kind of in the natural wine world, which can be a little experimental, and so to get to workshop with people about different ideas and using different vessels and different types of farming has just been really interesting and exciting. It never feels like, we're in Groundhog's Day. So everything's constantly different every single year.
So let's back on talk about life before wine a little bit. Leyla, let's start with you. Tell us about where you were born and raised and kind of your path into college.
Well, I was born in Milwaukee, Oregon, so just right outside of Portland. I grew up with my parents and my younger sister, and really close to my grandparents as well. My mom's side, my grandparents on my mom's side are also from the Portland area, or have lived in the Portland area, so I was close to them. Going into college, I had kind of a completely different idea of where I would go. I changed my major several times, started in business, thought about, political science or computer science, and then ended up majoring in philosophy and women and gender studies, which I remember my mom said, so you learned how to talk to a brick wall and make it talk back to you. And I was like, yeah. And then after college...
University of Oregon?
Oh yeah, University of Oregon, yeah. So I spent 5 years in Eugene, which I really loved. It's a smaller town, but it feels really like a close community. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I started to get into wine in college. I had some friends that were into wine, and we would go to the Broadway wine merchants all the time, and they would have winemaker dinners, and so we would go to those and get to taste all their wines and listen to their stories. And a couple of my friends, we would just nerd out together and do we would do like a women in wine night, and so we would pick like a region or like a style of wine, and then we would all bring those together and make food that pairs with that, and we would just become obsessive over it. And it got to the point where we would start going to these wine bars on like Tuesdays at like 11 a.m. because we knew that's when distributors would come by. And nobody's at the wine bar at 11 a.m., but we were. And we would just kind of sit there patiently waiting for distributors to come in, and then we would also get to try the wines that they were pouring and get to learn about them, and we would log it in our phones and just look it up later and just try and learn as much as possible from it. So it's kind of how that started. But then after college, wine still didn't feel like something that I could just get into, it, in a way, especially since I hadn't like learned about it like professionally or like in school. It just kind of felt like this dream that would never happen. So I started working in nonprofit in Portland. I worked for Morrison Child and Family Services, and it was a very rewarding job in many ways because you get to see all of these families and finding help for people, but it was also like unbelievably difficult at the same time. And so, yeah, pretty much like the way to just kind of like leave that job at the door was to learn about wine. And we would go to a new wine bar after work. And my coworker now, but she's been my best friend since like high school and college, we would go to Nostrana in Antica, and at 5 p.m. they had the best happy hour where we would get like a $5 glass of Lambrusco, $5 focaccia, and we would sit there until happy hour ended, and we would just pick everyone's brains that was working at the wine bar. And so yeah, so that's kind of just how I was like becoming obsessive over it. And then finally one day Ian and I came to Day Wines just for a tasting, and I was just blown away that all of these different wines were all made by the same producer, and I had been drinking them for years. And at the end of the tasting, I was like, can I work here? and I think the girl at the time thought I was crazy, but she was also kind of crazy, and she said, yeah. And so I sent her a resume, and a couple days later, she asked me if I could come in the following weekend and do a stage. And I remember it was one of the most embarrassing shifts of my life because I had never poured wine for anyone like that, and there was also just like so much to learn because we work with so many different grape varietals here at Day Wines. And I remember we had it was like a big open house day, and I was in charge of pouring a rosé, and it was kind of this like Southern Rhone style rosé, and I hadn't really learned much about Rhone, so I kept telling everyone, yeah, it's kind of like a Rome style wine, and people were like, they make wine in Rome, and I was like, just like this. And Brienne hired me, so I got to come back the next weekend, and I was like, this is nuts. And so, yeah, so pretty much every single day I was just studying at home, trying to learn as much as possible, and eventually she asked if I wanted to work full-time here. And so in the first year that I worked here, I completed wine and spirit education level 1, 2, and 3. Because I knew if I wanted to be serious about this and I wanted Brienne to keep me around, and at the time I was really faking it until I made it. And so I just really kind of dove into it, and then started working harvest, and it's kind of how it all happened.
Yeah, and very different trajectory for me. Grew up here in Oregon as well. Went to college down in Eugene at University of Oregon, where we met. I also didn't really know why I was there or what I was going to be studying, and I probably went through a few different ideas in my head through the years that I was going to school, but finally I landed on digital arts and, a minor in business, which is kind of coming in handy now. The pursuit of arts is pretty, I don't know, it's silly for some people. It's not very concrete for a lot of people, it's more of a passion than like a career. And I am very lucky that it was able to kind of sustain me for a handful of years, and I think it still is to a certain extent. I still do freelance design work, and I'm really lucky now that I get to do that work for a lot of my friends in the wine industry. I think it was kind of the perfect combination falling into wine as well, because there's so many aspects of it that rely on creativity, and I can see so many, I guess, crossovers between the two, making traditional, whether it's traditional sign painting or calligraphy, which are two of the things that I love to do, and I guess making wine in a more traditional kind of hands-off way. I think that there's a certain level of craft that they each require, and it really keeps it interesting. But we kind of fell into the right circle of people when we got into wine, and they had similar directions and passions and kind of a philosophy as us, and it's kind of built how we think about wine and how we, go about making our own wine.
How'd you two meet?
Yeah, we had a mutual friend who kind of put us together.
We met my freshman year of college, and you were a sophomore.
Yeah.
We just had a lot of crossovers with different friends and whatnot, and I think we just had very similar interests. And
We did.
I remember one summer when I moved into the first house that I lived in, I was there alone because I had a job in Eugene, whereas all of my friends, they would like go home for the summer and then, work their summer jobs. So I was in this house all alone with nothing to do, and Ian came back to Eugene early that year. And so, I just pretty much every night told him to come to my house. And I was like, I'll cook you dinner. Like, please just come hang out with me. And so just like I trapped him in this building, I also trapped him in my house.
Yeah.
Never left.
Those were like really developmental years for us when it comes to wine as well. There was we didn't know much about wine, and we would kind of just buy bottles randomly, like whether we liked the art or the color of the wine or whatever it was. And we kind of fell in love with a handful of producers who they're still some of our favorites. And at the time we had no idea how they worked. We didn't know what biodynamic farming was. We didn't know what natural wine was. We didn't know the history of the Jura wines, and those were wines that we initially really got kind of captured by because of their just uniqueness. And so that kind of built our relationship and also just our interests in wine, even though at the time we had no intention of moving into the wine industry in any capacity.
Yeah. And we were also in a phase in our life where we were just wanting to try everything. So, we would go to all of these different restaurants and try foods that we had never tried before. And I was honestly a pretty picky eater for the most part before I met Ian. I still love a bean and cheese burrito, but that was just pretty much what I ate. And I remember I was with Ian and he asked me do you want to go get sushi? And this was before we had started dating, but I knew that I wanted to date him. So I was I have to go eat sushi. And he was what kind of sushi do you like? And I was I love sushi. Just order whatever. And so he ordered all this sushi and I was oh my God, I've never had raw fish before. And it was great. And we would just kind of do that. And then, we got really into wine and trying different grape varieties. And Ian got into whiskey and really learning about that. And honestly, we had great taste for being poor and not knowing what we were doing. The other day I was looking back on pictures of, it was all of the wine that we had that was sitting on top of a hot refrigerator because we didn't know better. But we had grower champagne, and we would drink so much Ganavat, which was just insane for 21-year-olds. And it was just whatever, because we didn't know. It was a fun time.
Eugene was a great time, and it really built our relationship and our kind of desires and interests around food and wine. And yeah, we miss the place a lot.
Yeah, we do. It was really fun. Yeah.
So Ian, you mentioned first harvest 2020. Tell me a little bit about the harvest. What do you remember most about it? What are some of the sort of the standout memories for you?
Oh, I mean, I just remember that we didn't really have a plan to make much rosé at all, and we ended up making the most rosé Brienne had ever made that year due to the wildfires. And I think it was really interesting to me that we had this plan to make a lot of Pinot Noir, and she had to be kind of creative and pivot the direction of the entire vintage because of the smoke's impact on the fruit. The crew that we had I was obviously the least experienced person there, but they were all so friendly and inviting and knowledgeable, and they were willing to share anything that they knew with me, which was just really, really special. And I think it didn't necessarily seem hard in the moment, but looking back at it, it was a very difficult harvest for, so many different reasons. Me not even knowing how to do a punch down or a pump over or how to assemble a pump, to not knowing, really anything. But I saw that everybody around me was working really hard and diligently, and I was, I kind of just picked up on those cues, and I said, I have to do this exact same thing. But it kept me on my feet and interested in a different way. And I was really lucky that the Maloufs the following year had offered for me to come and work with them, because those were also wines that we really enjoyed. And I think they had just moved into their new space, and it was really special to be on a property that had a vineyard surrounding it that was beautiful, and the people were just really similar to us in the sense of their passion for hospitality and food and wine. And we had a lot of good times, and we feel very special that they became so close with us. But yeah, every harvest brings a new challenge, and 2020, I haven't seen any of those challenges since then, which is great. I remember there was one day where we got notifications on our phone that it was like level 1 or level 2 evacuation notices. So we had to leave in the middle of harvest to go and pack up whatever belongings we thought were necessary. And
AKA, we packed our passports and then 3 cases of champagne.
Yeah, we just kind of grabbed some wine and our important documents that we had that were kind of a pain to, replace. And then we're like,
we're gonna drink champagne while we do it.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, looking back at that now, it was pretty ridiculous of us to even think about grabbing wine, but I guess that kind of solidifies the fact that it was important to us, and it, of course, is replaceable, but it was what was on our mind. Yeah.
How did the second harvest compare? First harvest here in 2020, second harvest at the new property and new to them property in 2021. How did you feel the second harvest versus the first?
It was a lot more intimate and less chaotic. There's certain things that you have to kind of feel out when you're in a new space, and I think there was a lot of things that they were still figuring out in the new space, whether it's temperature of rooms or the general space that we had available to us. Really we had to, I guess, overcome a lot of obstacles there, which was also really interesting to be able to see how people think creatively and work out these problems. There was always, outdoor ferments because we would run out of space in the cellar and we had to put the grapes somewhere. It was a lot of, really, really long nights and early mornings, but it didn't feel hard because we were all doing it together, and we all had a smile on our faces the whole time. And that's what kind of kept me going back and staying with them. Was I liked the wines that we produced, but I also just liked the culture of the building. Yeah, which was similar to, I guess, Day Wines. When Leyla started here, the culture of the building really kept it interesting for her and me, even though I wasn't even working here. Being around multiple winemakers in the same space is it's beneficial in so many ways. It's like you're doing a harvest with 5 different winemakers when you're just actually working with one.
Well, there's nothing better than working a 15-hour day. You've been soaking wet all day, you're sore, but then afterwards you get to sit around a fire with all of the people that you just worked with who become your friends, and you become really close with them, and you get to blind each other on a wine and eat food together and camp in a backyard somewhere and then wake up and do it again. And it really keeps you going, I would be exhausted every single night, but then in the morning I was just so wide awake and ready to do it, because I was like, not only do I get to work with all of my friends, but we also get to create something that maybe a year or 2 from now, someone on the other side of the country is going to open it up with their family, maybe drink it on Christmas or something. And it just felt so special to be doing that, It's something that people are excited about. Yeah, and you get to share it.
And so what year did you do your first harvest?
2019 was my first harvest.
So tell me about that.
Yeah. When I started working here, I really didn't know fully what direction I wanted to go in. I think I had seen myself maybe working at a wine bar somewhere that was busy with people. But being such a small team here, you get to help with every aspect of the building. And so I would watch our assistant winemaker all the time. At the time it was Eric Berg from Ricochet, and I would just ask questions, and he used to be a teacher, and so I think forever he's going to be a teacher. And I would ask him, oh, tell me about this wine, and he would light up and, tell me for an hour, what was going on. And so I asked if I could work harvest here, and I think it was already implied that I would work harvest because, again, we're such a small team. And I worked with a crew of people who had never worked harvest before. So Eric and Brianne were our leaders, but then we had a team of, I think it was 4 people, and we were all pretty young and never had done a harvest except for one gal who had done a partial harvest. So we were all super green, which meant that every step of the way we were being taught, the smallest of details, why you use certain clamps and valves, and you get to learn just about the chemicals that you use and what they do in every single process of using them. And so I just absolutely loved it, because it just felt like a pool of knowledge that I just got dropped into. I think during harvest, especially to work with winemakers who are so passionate about what they do, it just feels electric in a way. Because we would have lunch and we would get to try a new wine that Brianne brought in, and we would learn about Pulsard or something, and it was just a really good time. It was really long hours. It was hard because I had never done something like that. But I think during that I was like, I could do this, if I just learn more and I keep doing this, I could eventually do this. I think, doing punch downs all day long, you start to strategize about your life. And I was like, one day I'm going to be doing my own punch downs. And so, it was a really good time. And I think working with people who were also new was just really fun, because all of us would just get to bounce off different knowledge. We all came from, different states and different walks of life, and so we had all tried completely different things, and it was fun to just bring that all together in one. So and then ever since then, I pretty much begged to work harvest here, which is pretty easy. So Brianne just always throws me in. And then eventually we started doing our own harvests, which was nice.
Yes, that's my follow-up question. You mentioned that your project came together a bit sooner than you were anticipating, but tell me about kind of the genesis of making your own brand. When did you start thinking about it? and what were the steps once it became available? How did you get it off the ground?
I mean, it was always kind of on our mind, but it seemed like it was something that was pretty far in the distance. But in 22, essentially, we were talking with the Maloofs at one point, and they were like, if you want to make a little bit of wine, you're more than welcome to. And what initially started out as a wine that we were gonna bottle and kind of just have for friends and family, we ended up creating something, and we're like, no, we want to share this with people. We don't want to just keep this in this close circle. We want to actually sell this. So we kind of forced ourselves into it. Yeah.
Well, and I will say, Ian's much more adventurous than me. So I'm someone who likes to just really plan. So I was very much against making wine that year. I like to have everything completely set up, and I wanted to feel like I knew 100% everything about wine. But I think, in that moment, Ian was like, so there's never going to be a day where you know everything about wine.
Yeah.
And also, the best way to learn about wine and to learn, what you love about wine is to just do it. It was kind of a late decision. Harvest had already started, and the Maloof said that we could have some Pinot Gris, and we were like, we don't just want to make a Pinot Gris as our, first wine.
Yeah.
And I remember Brienne got Pinot Meunier from Abbey Road Farms, and I was like, I want some of that. And so I asked her if we could have 6 5-gallon buckets worth of Pinot Meunier, and she said, sure. So I grabbed 11 5-gallon buckets and filled it with Pinot Meunier, and I was like, this is close to 5 or 6. And I filled up my car. My car was covered in earwigs and all sorts of bugs. And we kind of made some
It was
fun decisions.
We made some fun decisions, and it ended up being a wine that kind of, sparked the interest for how we make wine now. It was a blend, first of all, that we had never seen before. And then in addition to that, it was also, we kind of treated the grapes in ways that we hadn't seen the grapes be treated. And the wine itself that we ended up with was, again, this kind of impossible to classify wine because it was carbonic Pinot Meunier and then Pinot Gris that we treaded and just let kind of macerate for a few hours before pressing, and then we blended the two. So a very non-traditional rosé. It wasn't quite a light-bodied red, but we really enjoyed it, and the flavor profile that came from it, and it
was very us.
It was very us, and we actually, for the label, I created an illustration of the first house that we lived in together. So it was our first house wine that we made. And we still think about that wine, and actually this most recent harvest kind of came full circle because we were offered some fruit from Abbey Road Farm, and we were able to buy that Pinot Meunier ourselves instead of just pinching it off of Brienne Day.
Came in a picking bin this time instead of buckets.
And then we were actually able to make a very similar wine to that wine that we made that first year. It's Aligoté and Pinot Meunier this time, not Pinot Gris, but in spirit, it's really the same wine, and it has a lot of similarities to that first wine that we made. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a fun wine.
Yeah.
And people would ask us about it, and we were like, well, it's kind of a rosé because it's pink, but it drinks more like a red/orange, but it is mostly Pinot Gris. And basically we said, just drink it.
Yeah. And then, after that first year, we kind of looked at each other and we're like, we made a pretty, a halfway decent wine. We enjoy this, and everybody that we pour it for enjoys it. We should just do it again. Yeah. And I was still working at the Maloofs the next harvest, and they had offered us some grapes from their property. And we were like, okay, we're gonna make this one wine. We're gonna make another wine. And we ended up making 3 wines that year. But all of them kind of fell into place in a similar way, where none of them were exactly planned, but people there's always a surplus of fruit in this state. It's kind of just the reality of the state right now. There's been so much, I don't want to say overproduction, but people got really excited and planted more grapes than they can really know what to do with. So the availability of grapes has been pretty loose. And so pretty much every year we get to capitalize on that in our own way. And it keeps our winemaking interesting because there's always new grapes that are available, and we can kind of be flexible with what we decide to purchase and work with. And yeah, in 2023, none of the grapes were planned. It's so, you know, we decided to make the wines in a very spontaneous way, where we got to taste the fruit and then kind of make the decision the day of. And frankly, that's still how we make wine. We still we have a loose idea of what we would like to do with the grapes, but we don't really make the concrete plan until we see them.
Yeah, we make spontaneously intentional wine. You know, keeps it fun, keeps us on our toes. People always ask, what are you making next year? We'll tell you when it's happening.
Yeah.
And even then, we might not fully know. But I mean, I'm really proud of the wines that we've made, and it's been really fun. And I like not necessarily having a plan or following a recipe or, you know.
Yeah. I think that, there's a lot of people who kind of pigeonhole themselves into, you know, we're in this state of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, and that's what we're known for. But there's so much more that can thrive here, and we have so many different microclimates throughout the state, and people are experimental, and it's just growing more and more, the realization that people can really, there's a corner of this state where you can plant anything and it will work out. So we're lucky to be a part of that, and we look forward to everybody else being equally experimental as us, the farmers, the winemakers, and the drinkers. You know, they have to be open to trying something new. And
yeah, I mean, Oregon wine is like, you know, a library, and so it's like, why just read 2 books, you know? And so, yeah, it's really exciting to get to play around with so many different grape varieties, but also just different climates too. Because, you know, we source wine from the Willamette Valley, but then also the Applegate Valley, and we get to go visit all of those different AVAs, and yeah, it keeps it really fun.
I mean, yeah, the only grapes that we buy every year are from the Maloofs, and they're, you know, right on the edge of the coastal range, way up in Gales Creek. It's pretty, you know, it's essentially as far like northwest as you have grapes here in the state. And then, all the way down to the Applegate Valley, which is like, 4.5, 5 hours south. And it's a totally different climate, totally different elevation. Like, everything about it is different. But that's exciting. And we look forward to being able to like kind of see what each of those places offer and how we can work around it.
What's fun too is, I mean, we like to drink so many different wines, and so, you know, there could be a day where we're drinking something. Like last year we were drinking a Trousseau, and I was like, God, I wish we could make a Trousseau. Well, now we're making Trousseau.
Yeah,
and
kind of just fell into our lap.
Again. But, you know, Oregon just offers all of those possibilities. So, yeah, it's like a winemaker's dream, honestly.
So you kind of have like a chopped approach to making wine. Like the basket is delivered to you, and then you have to make the wine out of whatever kind of shows up.
It's like when you go to a farmer's market and you don't know what you're going to make for dinner, but then you see some chicories and you're like, oh, I can make a Caesar salad or something. It's like, this is great. But we kind of have that loose approach of.
Well, and there are some wines that like we definitely want to make, but you know, maybe we're just waiting for the right time or waiting for the right vineyard to call us up in the middle of harvest. But you know, for the most part, I think especially in these first few years, we've been wanting to experiment because it's like, you know, you don't necessarily know what's going to turn out well. You don't know what your, you know, niche is, what you're good at until you try it. So every year we've tried completely new things, and we've found some wines that we really, really like, and so then maybe there'll be repeaters, but then, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think, I don't know, having an artistic background and we're both quite creative people, and I think that allows us to use our creativity and this kind of spontaneous decision making to impact the wines that we're making. And I think that those things kind of go hand in hand for us, and we do the same thing when we cook. I mean, most of the time we're not really looking at a recipe, we're just kind of doing things off of taste and kind of our personal desires, like what we want that night. And so I think it only makes sense for us to be making wine in a similar way.
Absolutely.
So once you have you make this wine, you decide you want to share it, you want to get it out there. So tell me about the next step. Coming up with the name, coming up with the design, starting to sell wine. How did this all come about?
Yeah. Well, so our winery name's kind of goofy. It's Horst Devours, and that started I think when we were 21. So like I mentioned, Ian was really into whiskey, and so when we moved back to Portland, we would go to Bible Club a lot, the pre-prohibition bar in Selwood. And I mean, we were there a lot.
Yeah.
And they do a repeal day party. I don't know if they still do it, but it's really fun.
Yeah.
And I like to plan. So usually I'm someone who's going to get the tickets. I'm looking at the menu every 30 minutes because I'm figuring out what exactly is going on. But this time I was like, Ian can do this. And so Ian got the tickets. I didn't look at the menu. I was just focused on my outfit.
It was kind of a surprise in a way. And coming up to it, I was really excited. I was looking at this menu. I wasn't really sharing it with Leyla. I was just saying, hey, we're going out for a date. And we're gonna go drink whiskey and listen to music and have a good time. And I was telling her after reading the menu, I was like, oh, I can't wait for these Devours, or these, I probably
At one time he said Horst Devours, and I was like,
yeah.
I remember thinking to myself, like, there is no way in hell I'm eating horse tonight. Like, I know he's adventurous, but that's not happening.
Yeah.
And he just kept saying it, and I don't know why it never clicked for me.
No, I probably said it a dozen different ways. And, come to the night and we sit down at the bar and Layla's looking at this menu and she's like, sweetie, it's hors d'oeuvres. And so it's kind of this joke that I've never been able to, live down. But when we made that first wine, we were kind of throwing names across the table at each other, and I don't know who said it, but one of us said Horst Devours, and we both kind of laughed, and then we looked at each other and we're like, I mean, wine is so dependent upon food and the experience that you're having and sharing with the people across the table from you, and I think we're pretty, I don't know, lighthearted, comical people. We love to throw a joke around, and it felt right to kind of mix this joke and have this kind of subtle nod towards food and kind of French culture in a way, while also just, having it be very us.
Hors d'oeuvres are a big part of our lives too, because we love to host people. And we don't even have a big house, but we have a great backyard, and any chance that we can get, I'll beg Ian, can we have people over? And we do a full spread. And usually even on New Year's Eve, we have friends over and we do a huge hors d'oeuvre party. And we also like to go to bed early. So we love when people come over early, eat hors d'oeuvres, and then leave. So we've just always been hors d'oeuvre people, and so I think it just made sense to us,
It stuck with us.
Yeah.
But then I guess the selling of the wine, it kind of came naturally to us. Leyla and we have a lot of friends in the restaurant industry and the beverage industry and the wine industry, and when we started talking to people about our project, people were really willing to try this new wine from these young producers who are doing, frankly, kind of abstract wines. And so at first we were self-distributed, and it was really hard, frankly, for us. We both had day jobs, and then we were trying to sell wine. And
everyone wants to buy wine at 11 a.m. on a Thursday.
Yeah.
I'm in Dundee.
Yeah, exactly. So, the first few years we were just selling it all by ourselves. We would go to every wine event that we could here in the state. There's a handful of people who put on events and little wine fairs, and it was a great way to sell directly. But then
Some really good supporters too.
we had a lot of good supporters. A lot of the people who actually frequent Day Wines here were supporters of us, because they would ask Leyla, like, what are you doing with your time? And she's like, well, I'm making wine and selling wine, and they were always interested. And Leyla has this great way of having personal connections with anybody who talks to her, whether it's a stranger on the street or somebody across the bar from her. Whatever it is, she sparks conversation with people, and I think that was a really easy way for us to launch our wine.
A lot of our friends who work in the restaurant business bought our wine. Like, I'll never forget, like when Kate from Wonderly, she put our first wine on the glass pour list, and I was like, oh my God, our wine's on a menu.
Made it feel real.
That was crazy.
But then actually just this last summer, we were picked up by a local distribution company, and everybody there we've known them for a long time, and they're good friends of ours, and it felt really special to have somebody local representing us who knows us, because I think that's something a lot of people fall into when they kind of give up the rights to be selling their wine directly. This distributor is now representing you and speaking about your wine and your ideas, and do they know you very well? Like, how do they represent you, and is it how you would represent yourself? And it was kind of
it's a little nerve-wracking, but
they've done such a good job for us. So
life got a lot easier for us. Now we don't have to scramble as hard to buy grapes the following year.
So with your kind of abstract winemaking style, I appreciate that's a good term for it, abstract winemaking style. Tell me about end product. What is important to you about the end product? What do you want to make sure a Horst Devours wine is or has or represents?
I mean, more than anything, I think we just want wine that we would enjoy drinking. And I think that's every winemaker's goal, realistically, is to make a wine that they want to drink at the end of the day. But really, I think a lot of the wines that we make are kind of guided by wines that interested us before we were into wine, before we were in the industry. So we're not necessarily trying to remake those wines, but in spirit, we're trying to make them. If we tasted a light-bodied red that was really bright with acid and textural, we see that as something that we could make, but we might just kind of, decide the day of, like, oh, these grapes kind of remind me of this wine that we've had, and we could kind of go that direction with it. So the end product is really, there's no goal necessarily other than it being something that's interesting and that we find delicious.
We make wines for ourselves, we make wines for our friends, and if someone wants to buy it along the way, then
if other people like it, that's a bonus. But if we're proud of what we make and we enjoy it, that's frankly what matters most to us. We're not necessarily trying to cater to a specific audience.
We just want to use good ingredients to make wine that we love.
So what is sort of obviously I'm not going to ask you what wine you're going to make next, but what is sort of the future for the brand? Is there a goal in mind for a size? What does it look like when it's kind of fully fleshed out?
Well, we don't make too much wine. We're under 500 cases right now, so we're a micro winery. But I personally like that just because we have such a good relationship with our wine, and we get to be very close to it and take care of it very well. So I don't necessarily want to get big per se, and also, I mean, it's a tough business to be in. I mean, it's a very expensive thing to do, and the market changes so much. Like, since I've worked in wine, just since 2019, I've seen it grow tremendously, where it seems like everyone's just buying cases and cases, to then seeing it shrink up and kind of be a ghost town. So it's forever fluctuating. And so I never want to feel like we're in a place where we necessarily have to rely on it. I mean, it would be cool, but I also really enjoy, working in wine separately too.
I mean, we both enjoy our day jobs in wine and outside of wine, and I think that once you grow to a certain point, it might stop being fun, and we enjoy the fun aspect of it, and not feeling forced to make any one wine or any certain amount of wine any given vintage. Now that we have, representation for our wines, I think there's not necessarily an expectation that we make a certain amount of wine, but we would like to give them enough that they can, share it with the state at least. And we don't want, we've talked about some of our favorite wines are allocated and so expensive, and we know the work that goes into them and the cost that is required, but we don't want to see our wines really ever be that. We want them to remain accessible, and even if we're not making a lot of it and it is really special to us and we put an insane amount of time and effort into them, we don't want it to be incredibly expensive. We want our friends and our family to be able to afford it. Yeah, our normal friends.
I mean, if someone rich wants to buy our wine, we will raise the prices that day, but for the most
No, we won't.
for the most part, we want all of our friends to be able to drink our wine like on a Tuesday,
Yeah.
And we want it to still feel really special and be a beautiful wine that has, story and intention, but you should be able to share it with someone. And
Yeah, but I mean, ultimately, I think what we want to do with our brand and the wines is just kind of continue to experiment and to be able to work with what the state's offering us. And I think that we kind of landed in the right place to be able to do that. Many of the grapes that we enjoy and that we've gotten to work with, we actually got to work with them before we made the wines with them ourselves. So between the Maloufs and Briandais, there's over 50 varieties that we got to work with before we even started making wine. And not a lot of people get to say that here in this state.
yeah, it's like you get to learn about the world under one roof in a way.
Yeah, and I think we just want to kind of continue to do that. And, if somebody's planting something unique somewhere in the state, because we aren't really stuck buying any one grape, we're willing to reach out and work with that if they're kind of have the same philosophy and thought behind it as we do.
Yeah, as long as we get to keep learning and experimenting and be creative and have fun, and continue to work with our friends, then I'm happy. So yeah.
Talk about day jobs for just a second here. Let's start with you. You mentioned you were at Malouf for 3 years.
I was, yeah.
Tell us about kind of path since then.
Yeah, since then, I continually work with them over the summers in their restaurant. And then in 2024, I did a harvest with Antica Terra. And then just the spring of 2025, February of 2025, they brought me on as a full-time employee to work in the cellar and do production with them. So I just completed my second harvest with them just this last year, and now I'm just kind of, working in the cellar with them and learning a very different style of winemaking than what we make and the wineries that we've worked around and all of our friends' wineries. It's a very different style of winemaking, but there's this level of creativity that's associated with it. The way that we work is really interesting to me, and the wines are really interesting to me. And I think that because it's so drastically different than how we make wine, it's what kind of drew me towards it. So that's kind of the day job, and I'm still doing graphic design on the side as well, because apparently I'm not busy enough. So yeah, I make all of our labels for our brand, and there's a handful of other winemakers around the state that I do labels for, and I do menu design for a handful of restaurants around Portland, and logos and lettering and traditional sign painting. And those things are all kind of seasonal in a sense. The sign painting specifically, it kind of requires decent weather, warm weather at least, so my paint dries in a reasonable time. But yeah, that's what takes up all of my time, is those things.
He's a busy guy.
Yeah. And
Tell me an Antica Terra harvest story.
oh gosh. Oh, I mean, there's so many, and it's hard to decide like which mistake of mine do I decide to share. I mean, harvest is like a really fast-paced period of time, and you want to try to do everything you can as fast as you can and as well as you can at the same time. And sometimes those two things conflict. I remember there was a time this last harvest where I was forklifting some barrels, and the speed that I wanted to go was frankly faster than it should have been. And I kind of Donkey Konged a barrel off of a rack, and it rolled down a hallway. And luckily nobody was around to really see it, and there was no real danger involved in this situation. But it was one of those moments where I was like, oh, you have to, there's real consequences for your actions, and you need to be very careful in a place where you're working with heavy machinery. And I do consider myself a good forklift driver, but it's one of those things where you make a mistake once and then you never actually make that mistake again. And there's plenty of those things that can happen in the wine industry, where you learn from your mistakes and you never make them again. But yeah, no, I think that was, no harm was done. It was an empty barrel, and it was, an eye-opening moment of like, okay, take your time. Yeah, do it well. Yeah.
I will say, Ian working at Antica Terra, I think it's really made us dial in on like just really focusing on attention to detail. So we make wine pretty slowly. It takes a long time. We usually try and do our harvest days or, our bottlings and whatnot on a Sunday here when nobody's here, because we know that it's going to take us all day.
Yeah.
We like to sort cluster by cluster for the most part.
Yeah.
Everything's gravity flow. So, even when we're like pressing a wine, we're then racking it into barrel bucket by bucket. So it's just slowly.
It's very slow, and everybody asked me about the sorting at Antica Terra, and they're like, oh my God, you guys sort so much, it takes so long. And I was like, it takes us just as long, maybe because there's only two of us, but it literally takes us just as long to do all of our sorting, and it's pretty ridiculous. But we see the benefit of it at the end when in the bottle. The wines that we produce, we're really proud of, and we think that the slow and methodical work that we do plays into that.
Yeah. I never really have to be nervous during harvest, seeing how our fermentation's going, because I know that every single berry that has gone into our fermenters has been touched and assessed by us.
Yeah.
Like when we do carbonic maceration, people are like, oh my God, you can't check on your wine for like 3 weeks because it's all wrapped up in a fermenter bin. I'm like, but every single berry is gorgeous in there.
Yeah.
Because I touched every single one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it keeps it fun.
Yeah, I think the intentionality of what they do in their cellar has kind of impacted how we work on wine as well, and in a very positive way. Yeah. So.
Maybe not a scalable way, but a very
No, yeah, for sure. But again, we don't want to scale this project of ours to an insane height, and so that doesn't really matter to us. We will take our time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, what else are we doing, It's like, are we going to hang out at home? Might as well hang out on the crush pad all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Leyla, you've been here since 2019. Tell me
Yeah.
about kind of the trajectory of your work here and how sort of the growth of Day and the time you've been around.
Yeah, my job's changed quite a bit since I started working here. So when I first started working here, I was just tasting room associate. And yeah, like I didn't have like a Day Wine's email address. I pretty much came here poured the wine, left. But I enjoyed it a lot because I get to, still learn a lot, and I still get to be in the building, and I love talking to people, so that was really fun for me. But then with Harvest, I think it started to get a little bit more real. So worked Harvest, and yeah, pretty much since, in 2019, we weren't the busiest tasting room at the time. We had only been open for a couple years, and there was just one other person working with me. So I got to do a lot of side work. So I would learn how to wash barrels, or I would clean out a tank. I was pretty much doing the things that nobody actually wanted to do, but I was like, I don't know any better. I'll clean barrels all day. That sounds awesome. So I was doing a lot of that, and then, helping with bottling and setting up for that. And then 2020, I think it was March 13th or something, obviously laid off because of COVID. And I remember both Brianne and I cried over the phone to each other, and she was like, I'll find a way for you to work. And so I was delivering wine to people's houses. So, I would tell people, anyone that lives pretty much anywhere in Oregon, I'll drive to you and drop off cases of wine. So I was doing that a couple days a week, and that was fun. And then finally one day Brianne called me and was like, you can work full time again. So I became the tasting room manager. And I had never managed anything, so I was pretty nervous, but luckily we were still closed for business because of COVID, so I was the tasting room manager of nobody. And yeah, pretty much all day I would just find new things to clean and, and try and just learn as much as I could about the business. So I would do a lot of filing, and I'm a very nosy person, so I was okay, how much does this cost? How do you do that? And I would look through tax reports, and I was oh my gosh, there's so many different things that you have to think about and pay for. And I think Brianne just saw that I was interested in that, so I started taking on new roles and slowly kind of gaining new positions within the winery. And then I started doing sales trips. So that was really nice because I was getting to work with distributors, and I really liked seeing how it was different than selling to consumers, where maybe you're telling someone you're going to have this with this meal, or this is what it reminds me of, to then selling wine to people who have to sell that wine. So it's a completely different process, but I really enjoyed that part. So I've been doing a lot of that, but now I'm the general manager here. So I've really enjoyed this job because I get to learn about all the ins and outs of having a winery. So, I learn how to fix a pallet jack, or I replace light bulbs, but then I also, learn how to test for certain things and to manage people. I do all of our compliance now, so all of our tax reporting and whatnot. And yeah, it's been really interesting because I get to kind of learn about the back of the house of winemaking.
Yeah, well, and the front of the house.
Yeah.
Layla fixes the glycol unit. Layla loads and unloads trucks. Layla helps blend wines. It's kind of everything at this point.
But, that's what it's like working with a small team, and, having a boss who also has ADHD. So we're constantly just doing a little bit of everything. I mow the lawn here. But I don't think I would have it any other way, because my job is forever changing, and I'm honestly really grateful that Brianne has just given me the opportunity to learn so much. And yeah, I think that's really helped us with our business. Because I know what to look for. I know how to talk to people for certain things. I know where to order certain things, and and just all of the connections that I've made here as well have just been so unbelievably helpful. So
I mean, connections with farmers who we now source fruit from, who, Layla had been seeing them drop off fruit for the past seven harvests, and she would meet them at their truck and unload their trailer, and now we're buying fruit from those same people, and the trucks come into the same location.
Kind of perfect. Yeah, I mean, I love working here, so, and I mean, we have a sweet gig. We get to make wine here too. And, Brianne has some amazing equipment. And, anytime I'm maybe panicking about something, I can just ask my boss, because she's right there. So, yeah, it's been really nice.
So you talked earlier about kind of finding your people pretty early in the industry. So tell me about your kind of initial impressions of Oregon wine, and how you've seen the industry change in the years you've been around. Obviously, not a lot of time, but a lot of change. So tell me about kind of the path of the industry and how it looks to you now in 2026.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially just because we've been searching for new things, I'm not sure if Oregon wine has gotten more creative or we've just found that creativity. But it feels like people are starting to experiment a little bit more. I see more people starting to use Gamay and just different grape varieties.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a really weird time to be in the wine industry. And, it's working for us and we love it. But I think also at the same time, if someone said, I think I'm starting to want to make a wine business next year, I would be like, think about it. Because it's the most expensive thing that we've ever done.
Yeah.
We don't really make money off of this per se, because, you buy grapes, you make wine, you sell the wine, you buy more grapes. And, but
yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things in the market and just the state in general that have changed and that we can continue to see changing. I mean, there's, Pinot Gris used to be one of the most widely planted grapes here in the state. And more you see people ripping up their Pinot Gris or grafting over it for Chardonnay because, first of all, we're known for Chardonnay here, and frankly, a lot of these bigger farms, they kind of see that they can capitalize on selling Chardonnay at a significantly higher price than their Pinot Gris. They both do well here, there's something to say about that, but I think there's two different things happening in the state, and it's really interesting to be kind of seeing it from the outside, whereas some people are ripping up plants to plant essentially kind of like a monocrop, the Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. And then there's people who are being more experimental and planting things that have never been planted here in the state. And I think it's cool to be on the end of purchasing the grapes that are more experimental and that haven't been planted here and don't have a long history here, but seeing them work. So that's really exciting, and I hope to see that continues to happen and that people aren't necessarily just trying to capitalize on the most expensive grape that they can plant, but the grape that makes the most sense in that specific place. And then when it comes to the community, everybody that we've interacted with has been so inviting and helpful.
Yeah, it's less scary than I thought it would be. I think especially like within our community, it's a really good, like, loving group of people, and it feels like everyone is very hands-on and working together. Like, it doesn't feel like there's a man behind the curtain making the wine. And I think also, like, in the last 5 or 6 years that we've been doing this too, one of my favorite parts is that I've noticed that there's just more like respect and acknowledgement for the people that are a part of the winemaking process. So, especially like for vineyard workers, there's definitely so much room for improvement and for that acknowledgement. But I'm glad that people have been acknowledging the people who do some of the hardest work when it comes to wine, and how important they are. Yeah,
often they're not talked about too when it comes to wine. There's so many tasting rooms that you can go to where they talk about the soil, they talk about the wine in the bottle, they talk about the art on the label, they talk about the winemaker and their family and their, how they started, but they never really talk about the person who actually farmed those grapes. And
the most important part.
It is the most important part, because none of it, you can't do any of it without that first. And we're lucky, even though we don't necessarily buy grapes from the same place every single year, but when we do decide to buy grapes from somebody, we heavily acknowledge the work that they do, and we ask them as much as we possibly can about the work that they're doing in the vineyard with their plants, just to make sure that it really aligns with the work that we're doing, and there's kind of like a similar level of care and intention involved. And I think it's worth talking about that.
I even love that so many people that we bought grapes from assure us that they are paying everyone very well too.
Yeah.
Because I think that's very necessary.
Yeah.
Some of the hardest work out there.
Yeah.
So let's look ahead for the two of you a little bit. Tell me about what's next, personally, professionally. What is on your horizon? What are you excited about? What have you not done yet that you need to do?
I mean,
Day by day.
yeah, it's day by day. Yeah, we've just taken it step by step.
But I mean, I do see us growing a little bit more, and there are a couple things that I want to do within our business.
Yeah.
Like we were just speaking about starting our first wine club. So we finally have made enough wine to do so, and have met enough people that maybe they would buy wine from us 2 times a year, which would be awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a variety of vessels that we would like to work with. It's always been, on our mind to this level of experimentation requires, some different methods of making the wine. And again, all of these things are so expensive. We didn't really realize that when we got into this. It's crazy to think
Even
that
a valve is expensive.
yeah,
Like,
it's
goodness.
ridiculous. But we're looking forward to, as the business grows and we sell or make more wine, to be able to kind of put that money back into the business and to be able to work with different materials. That's really exciting for us. Frankly, we would also just like to share our wine to more places than just Oregon. So that's kind of on the horizon, but we need to, frankly, make a little bit more wine, or sell people a little less wine to share the love. Who knows?
One or the other.
But yeah, I mean, we love to travel, and we would like to travel with our wine and share our wine with other people in other places.
I would love to go work harvest with different producers that I've admired and looked up to, which can sometimes be hard because harvest happens around the same time in so many different places. But, I think we could make that work sometime. And but yeah, for right now, I mean, I'm really happy with how things are going. I mean, if one of our friends wanted to start a winery nearby and we all made wine together, that would be awesome. But I mean, again, it's pretty nice making wine here as well. Yeah. We're really lucky to have.
Yeah, we've got a lot of resources at our disposal between here and my friends and bosses at Antica Terra are very generous with what they allow us to use, and they're helpful in every way possible. So we're lucky to have such frankly friendly bosses, and I guess encouraging bosses as well.
Post-college, we just had so many different, life changes, job changes, and so much, the pandemic. There were so many times where it was like, what the hell are we doing? And it finally feels right now that we've fallen into our right places for the time being. So
Absolutely.
So in a way, I kind of just want to embrace it and soak it up while it doesn't feel chaotic.
So just yesterday, you posted a menu on Instagram that you call one of your wines an elegant white wine. Yeah. I had to mention that. Tell me about seeing your wine on a list like that, seeing it described that way. What does it feel like? What does it mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of made us laugh, but it is crazy. Every time we see somebody post a photo of our wine, whether it's at a wine shop or a restaurant or somebody's backyard, wherever it is, it feels really special and exciting, because we know that we're really proud of this thing, and that there's people that are consuming it and enjoying it. There's a lot of
and it's kind of been like a scavenger hunt for us in a way,
It is, yeah.
Because it's I love to ask for a depletion report, but I can't bug our distributors that much, so it's fun to just be out in the wild and be like, oh my god, there's our wine.
Yeah.
But to see it on a bottle list is even crazy, or on a by the glass list is crazy.
Before we had a distributor, we were doing it all ourselves. So we knew exactly where our wine was, and we had a close relationship with those people. Most of the restaurants that we were selling it to, we had dined there many times or drank there many times, and that was why we were on the list. I mean, hopefully we were also on the list because they liked the wine. But now having somebody else do that work for us and getting these surprises it's really special. It's
There's
exciting.
nothing that's cooler than going to a restaurant and ordering a glass of the wine that you made, and you're just like, oh my god, this is so elegant, like who makes this? And yeah, it's just been really fun, and we've gotten to be, you know, patrons at new places because of it, and see our wine get into some of the most interesting places,
Yeah,
but then
it's
also places we love.
Yeah, really exciting to see our wines on a list next to some of our idols, or even in the distribution book, seeing our wines, you know, being sold by some of our just incredibly well-known famous winemakers, and just, you know, oh, we're just like a page down. We're right there with them.
Yeah. Or like the other day, we were on a glass pour list right next to Maloof Wines and Day Wines, and I was like, this is just
So full circle.
I was like,
Yeah.
do they know? Like, it's so weird. But yeah, it's been really neat to see. Yeah, and it's cool to tell our families where to go, or
Yeah.
you know, for people to send us a picture on Instagram, people that we don't know, and like, oh my god, where did you buy this?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been nice.
All right. That's all the questions I have for the two of you today.
Awesome.
Anything I didn't ask that I should have? Anything we didn't talk about that you were hoping to talk about today?
No, I mean, I think we kind of touched base on most of what we're doing and our thoughts around what we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you both so much
Yeah.
for taking the time to share
Thank
your
you.
story. Thanks for making this happen. Thank you to Brianne and everybody at Day for letting us have it here.
Yeah.
I will say that this is the middle of January and it is like sunny and 50 degrees out.
I'm like warm.
So I'm not sure what that says about climate change, but I'm enjoying the sunshine
Yeah.
today. So
Sure. Me too.
thank you both very much for making this happen. Thanks
Yeah.
for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Yeah.
having us.
Thank you.
Glad we were finally able to do this.